before clay, there was fire. Not flame and smoke, but a smokeless fire, a fire that thinks. This is the foundational fact that rewrites the entire story of creation. 1,000 years before our time, a 9th century theological text describes the jinn not as wish-granters, but as a separate race of conscious energy, woven into reality itself. To understand why this matters, you have to start with the ink on that page and the man who wrote it. The manuscript is open on the desk. It's late. The only light is a single lamp, and it casts a warm circle on a page of dense, flowing Arabic script. This isn't a story. It's a 9th century theological text, and I'm holding it open to the passage on creation. You know the version, God creates man from clay. But here, 1,000 years before any of us were born, the text describes a different act of creation. Before clay, there was fire. Not the fire we know, not flame and smoke and ash. A smokeless fire, a fire that thinks. The ink on the page describes it as a substance of pure energy and will, given form and consciousness. They were made first. They are not spirits, not angels. They are a separate race, the jinn, living in a world parallel to our own, woven into the same reality but just out of phase. The text is matter of fact. This is not mythology to the person who wrote this. It is cosmology, a map of a populated universe. Reading it now in this quiet room produces a specific kind of vertigo. It's the feeling of reading something late at night that challenges everything you thought you knew, like discovering a hidden chapter in a familiar book. All my life, genie meant a wish-granter in a lamp. This says something else entirely. This says neighbor. And that foundational difference, fire versus clay, is where the first and most profound misconception begins. Because if they are made of the same substance as thought and will, then what does that mean about their relationship to us? The text turns the page. The next section is titled On Interactions. I haven't read it yet. I'm not sure I want to. But the text doesn't stop at creation. It keeps going. It describes their world. I close the manuscript for a moment. The lamplight feels too small. I need to picture it, not just read it. So I think of a place I've never been, a desert oasis at the last moment of dusk. The sky is a deep indigo, the sand still holding the day's heat. The air above the water doesn't just shimmer from temperature. In the 14th century text, Ajaib al-Makhlukat, the wonders of creation, this shimmer is described differently. It is the subtle, constant distortion where our world presses against theirs, a perceptual glitch, a place where the veil is thin. And on the other side of that veil, the texts describe societies, not a ghostly void, but a parallel reality of complexity. Jinn have kings and courts. They engage in trade, hold markets for goods incomprehensible to us. They form families, build dwellings in the unseen places, the deep deserts, the abandoned ruins, the empty spaces between stars. Crucially, they have religions. Some follow prophets of their own. Some, the texts state, follow ours. They are not monolithic. They are individuals with all the free will, morality, and caprice that implies. This is not a monster manual. It is an anthropological survey of a neighboring culture. This changes everything. The pop culture genie, a bound servant granting 3 wishes, is not just simplified, it is a profound reduction, a flattening of a complete cosmology into a plot device. The real tension isn't about captivity, it's about coexistence. 2 intelligent races made of different fundamental substances, sharing the same space, often unaware of each other. It makes the uncanny sensation of feeling watched in an empty room, or the modern physicist's hypothesis of folded dimensions, feel less like fantasy and more like a forgotten intuition. Their world isn't over there. It is here, just out of phase. And that coexistence, the texts insist, is not always peaceful. With free will comes a spectrum of character. Some jinn are benevolent, seeking knowledge or spiritual alignment. Others are malicious, taking pleasure in mischief or worsts. They can be jealous, possessive, wrathful. They can influence thoughts, whisper suggestions, and in extreme cases they can possess. This isn't a rare horror story trope. Within this framework, it is a documented hazard of a populated universe, like contracting a disease from a neighbor. The medieval scholars treat it with chilling pragmatism. They devote entire chapters to diagnosis, to protective prayers, to rules of engagement. Which leads to the most unsettling practical question, the one that finally made me open the manuscript again to that section titled On Interactions. If they can marry humans, bear children with them, walk among us unseen, how do you ever know who is what? The line between the two races in the old stories is sometimes not a line at all. It is a blur, a fusion. And that idea is what the legal texts are for. They are the rule book. I picture a different room now. Not my midnight study, but a scholar's chamber at dawn. Sunlight, sharp and clear, cuts through a high window to fall on a specific volume of Islamic jurisprudence, the Fiqh. The light doesn't illuminate the whole page, just one column of precise, inky script. This isn't folklore, it's law, a formalized manual for coexistence with your invisible neighbors. The rules are meticulous, born from centuries of observed or believed interaction. Before entering a dark room, a deserted place, or even your own home at night, you should greet it, a simple Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. It is not a superstition, it is a diplomatic announcement, a courtesy to any unseen occupant, allowing them to withdraw before pouring out hot water, especially at night. You are to say a prayer. The reason given is chillingly practical. Jinn are everywhere, and harming one by accident is an excellent way to make a permanent, vengeful enemy. This is the core of it. These rituals are a framework for navigating a world that is fundamentally shared. It reframes the everyday gestures we all perform, knocking on wood, saying bless you after a sneeze, avoiding certain paths at night, not as empty habits, but as inherited diplomacy. They are the protocols for a constant, negotiated proximity with a parallel society that operates on different physical laws. The most profound rule, however, concerns knowledge itself. You are not to seek them out. You are not to try and see their world, to summon them, to make pacts. The texts are unanimous and severe on this point. The boundary exists for a reason. To deliberately blur it is an act of profound arrogance and danger. The relationship is meant to be one of respectful, cautious distance. You acknowledge their presence, you take steps to avoid offense, and you otherwise go about your life. But this creates a final, quiet tension. If the rule is to live alongside them without looking, how can you ever be sure the rule is being followed by them? The manual implies a fragile treaty signed by only one side. You say your greetings, you pour your water carefully, and you hope in the silence that follows that the acknowledgement is mutual. But the manuals of law and etiquette exist for the predictable interactions. They cannot prepare you for the unpredictable ones. I turn a page, and the scene shifts again. Now I'm looking at a page from a medieval medical treatise, the ink faded to a soft brown. It is not a diagram of anatomy, but a list of symptoms for diagnosis. The patient, a man from Basra, reported no fever, no visible wound. He described a coldness moving through his limbs, a sensation of another presence occupying his body like a dense, intelligent smoke. The physician's conclusion was not illness, but possession. The treatment was not medicine, but prayer. This is the intimate violation the legal texts quietly fear. It is not about grand spectacle, but a quiet usurpation from within. The visceral fear of losing control of your own body or mind, a universal anxiety that makes the concept of possession terrifyingly personal. The threat shifts from a mythical monster to a psychological siege, your own hand moving without your consent, your own voice speaking words you did not choose. The enemy is not at the gate. The enemy is already inside the walls, having slipped past all the careful greetings and poured water, having found a crack in the treaty no manual could ever fully seal. I close the treatise. The room is too quiet, the weight of the manuscript too physical. I stand and walk to the window, looking out over the sleeping city. A grid of streetlights and darkened windows. From this vantage, it looks peaceful, ordinary, but the material I've been reading insists on a second layer, an invisible city superimposed upon this one, that late-night thought staring out your own window, wondering what's really out there in the dark, beyond just your reflection. Here, it is not a question. It is a doctrinal fact. Every shadowed alley, every silent apartment, every empty stretch of desert highway might not be empty at all. You are sharing the space. The legal manuals and poured water warnings are not superstition. They are a peace treaty for a cold war that never ends, a set of rules for a coexistence that is constant, unequal, and fundamentally unsettling. The true scale of it settles over me now. It is not about fearing a monster under the bed. It is about accepting that the entire world is someone else's bed, and you are the guest who must tread softly, never knowing if you are truly alone. The silence outside my window feels different. It feels occupied. I turn from the window, the occupied silence still clinging to the air. My next source is not a legal manual or a medical text. It is an illuminated manuscript, its pages a riot of gold leaf and cobalt blue. I open it carefully, the vellum cool and heavy. The text is a historical chronicle, written in a calm, bureaucratic hand. It does not describe a haunting or an exorcism. It recounts a marriage. The entry is matter of fact. It details the union between a human man and a female djinn. It lists the dowry, which included items of intangible nature, a promise of unseen protection, a whisper of future knowledge. It notes the social challenges, the groom's family's apprehension, the difficulty of explaining absences, the strange cold that lingered in their shared home. Most strikingly, it records the legal rulings sought from scholars of the time, debating the validity of the contract, the rights of any offspring. The entire affair is treated with the dry gravity of a property dispute or a trade agreement. Here is the dangerous intimacy. This is not a fleeting possession or a distant haunting. This is a full, recognized relationship, binding a life to something from a completely different order of existence. The universal complexity of marriage, stretched into the unimaginable. The chronicle notes the marriage lasted for 7 years. It does not record how it ended. That blank space is its own kind of cold. It suggests a parting of ways between realms, a dissolution as quiet and final as a door closing in a silent house. The manuscript page offers no more. It simply turns to the next entry, a record of a flood. The bureaucratic world moves on, having calmly documented a crack in reality itself. I close the manuscript. The gold leaf of the illumination seems to hold the lamplight, a pocket of captured fire in the dark room. The research is complete. I have cataloged the societies, the laws, the medical diagnoses, the marriages, but this was never about cataloging monsters. It was about mapping a hidden layer of reality, one believed to be as factual as stone or wind by billions of people across centuries. The true weight, the true unease, settles not with the descriptions of possession or the accounts of unseen cities. It settles with the ordinariness of the rules, the meticulous daily etiquette for sharing a world. The profound horror is not in the scream, but in the whisper. It is in the quiet, practiced gesture of pouring water before entering a room, a gesture performed for generations not out of superstition, but from a considered understanding that the space is already occupied. It is a worldview where the unknown is not abstract, but has weight, intelligence, and a claim to the same corners you call your own. That is the dangerous intimacy. Two creations, fire and clay, woven into one reality. The rules exist because the contact is assumed to be constant, subtle, and perilously close. It makes your own world feel different. It charges the silence of your home with a potential presence. The unsettling comfort of your own bed, after learning something that changes how you see the world, is that the familiar space feels subtly, permanently shared. The fire was here first. The clay learned to build its houses in the spaces between the flames, and the rules are the careful, quiet treaty for a peace that is never quite guaranteed.